Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This is going to be one stream of consciousness. Now, you'll see a lot of videos on the internet say that desire came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It came into your heart for a reason. You had that desire because Allah put it there. And then you will have people on the internet that will try to debunk this and be like, how do you know that came from Allah? How do you know that didn't come from Shaitan? Right? Now, I am going to give you the full explanation as to how this works. The first thing we need to understand right off the bat is that downloads can only come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Shaitan has not been given the powers to give you a cognition, a divine download. And let's first understand what a divine download is. Let's say that you're sitting down, you're relaxed, you're having a nice day. Maybe you're out with your friends, maybe you're out with your family. You're just in a relaxed state, and then all of a sudden you get this idea. It's a business idea. You're like, wow, that's a really good business idea. And you feel very, very, very good about it. That came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you close your eyes and you visualize something, and it feels really, really good, it makes you feel closer to your Lord. You feel as if this is something you have to act upon. That came from your Lord. But see, soon after, there could be a moment of doubt. There could be a moment of uncertainty. There could be a moment of, what if it doesn't work? There could be a moment of, what if people judge me? There could be a moment of, I have to harm this individual in order to get to this goal. Or I have to step on this individual to get to my goal. Or in order for me to win, somebody else has to lose. You see, that original feeling is what came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But that second feeling did come from Shaitan. But Shaitan is not the one that could send you the downloads, the synchronicities, the cognitions, whatever you want to call it, my friends, my brothers and sisters, whatever you want to call it. That can't come from Shaitan. But Shaitan can waswasa. Shaitan can influence the divine download. Now, here's one thing you gotta understand, is that this divine download comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it can only come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is the only one that's connected to you here. We all have this connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's closer to us than our jugular veins. Now, this can come to us through a variety of forms. A download, a cognition, a synchronicity, something that just is planted in our mind, and it feels so strong and it feels so good that you're like, yes, this is the solution. That is Allah showing you something. That is Allah guiding you towards something better for yourself. It is Allah trying to answer your dua. And this can come in the form of a download. This can come in the form of a vessel, of a door that is presented to you. And this is simply through the qadr of Allah. And sometimes it can come to you through the form of symbolism. And there's many cases in the Quran that teaches us this. Okay, for example, Musa alayhi salam, when he needed guidance, who did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala send to him? Gither, right? Musa alayhi salam's like, well, I must be a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There can't be somebody smarter than me, somebody more knowledgeable than me. Allah said, not so fast. There is somebody, but you're not going to be able to handle this guy. And he sent Gither. When Qabil hurt Habil or killed Habil, he didn't know how to bury the body now, did he? Who did Allah send? Allah sent birds, or a crow, sorry. And the crow had killed another crow and then buried the crow, right? So there's symbolism here. Allah will send ships, all right, vessels, opportunities, maybe in the form of a human being, maybe in the form of a billboard, maybe in the form of an ad, maybe in the form of something that's physical. Who knows, right? An opportunity will present itself to you. Now here's a situation with this, right? Is that Allah will send this to you, but it is through your own free will that you decide if you get on this boat or not. It is through your own free will if you decide that will you take advantage of this download or not, right? And this is where the dilemma exists. How do we know that this is qadr? And how do we know that this is free will? Look, your risk is written, okay? Allah tells us very, very straightforward, is that unless you do things in Allah's way and you trust Him, and rely upon Him, He's not going to give you anything except what is already ordained for you, already destined for you. However, through free will, you can quite literally accomplish more. You can gain even more risk. Now, this is a very complicated subject. I'm not going to go into the subject right now because it will just mind boggle you, and then you're going to be like, okay, wait, I'm losing track. However, that's how it goes, okay? And Allah tells us that in the Quran. Now, I want you to look at this as a situation of the story that I once told, and this is a very common story, especially in Christian folktale, of the story of the pastor. Now, the pastor knows the flood is coming. So everybody in the town is getting ready for this flood to come and they're escaping. But the pastor says, no, God will save me. And then the pastor starts to stay in his church and he goes on top of the roof and the flood's rising higher and higher and higher. And then a boat comes by and says, Pastor, you're going to drown. You're going to die. Pastor, get on the boat with us. Pastor says, no. God's going to save me. Boat says, okay, very well, Pastor. Boat goes on. Then the water rises all the way up here. Pastor's holding on to the pole for dear life. And then a helicopter comes by and says, Pastor, you're going to die. Might as well just get on the helicopter, right? He said, no, God's going to save me. And then the helicopter goes by because everybody respects his pastor, and clearly he has some sort of spiritual divine knowledge, right, that other people don't. So they're like, okay, I guess pastor knows better. Helicopter leaves. And then eventually the flood goes up and up and up, and the pastor dies. The pastor goes up to heaven, asks God, well, God, I thought you were going to save me. You know what God says? God says, I sent you the vessels. I sent you the boat, and I sent you the helicopter. You just didn't hop on. And this is the same situation here. Okay? In that moment, in this story specifically, what happened was Shaitan became the dependent variable. And this is now all going to click. It's going to come full circle for you here. Is that the downloads do come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The vessels do come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The doors come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The symbolism comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the qadr comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? Which is already predestined. However, Shaitan has been given a special power. Now, Shaitan cannot send you a download. Shaitan does not have a direct connection to you. However, Shaitan does have one thing. He has the power to waswasa. He has the power to whisper. Now, Shaitan can attack a few things. He can attack you in the logical capacity. Now, understand that the brain is a very contractionary, let's say, system, a mechanism. It's very contractionary. I want you to think about it, right? The brain wants you to contract because the brain thinks how? The brain works side by side with the nervous system, which is your survival radar, your survival mechanism, to make sure that you don't die, that make sure you don't leave your comfort zone, that make sure you're not stepping into uncertainty. So the brain's like, I need to know how this is going to happen and how that's going to happen and what this thing is and why this thing is and when this is going to happen. So the brain tries to contract. For example, if there's financial issues, the brain's automatically going to try to cut expenses. However, the qalb, the heart, is expansionary, which means that if you're really tapping into your true being, your true nature, true abundance, and you rely upon Allah, you have tawakkul Allah, right? You spend more because Allah tells us in the Quran, His provision is tight, let Him spend. Why? Because that's a test. It's a test to trust your Lord, okay? Now, Shaitan's going to attack the logic. Shaitan's going to be like, how? Well, you just got this download for this new business idea. Maybe you got to marry this person. Maybe you got to call somebody and ask for forgiveness. Maybe you got to forgive somebody. Maybe you're in a fight with your parents and you haven't talked to your parents for a year. And you got this download from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and it felt so good. I should call my parents because my parents aren't going to be in this world forever. I should call my parents. But then all of a sudden, Shaitan attacks the logic. Well, what if they don't pick up? What if they're mad at you? Right? What if they don't see the call? And now you have to wait on call from them. And that's going to hurt your ego, isn't it? Shaitan's going to attack it. Right? He's going to attack the logic. He's going to make you contract. Shaitan's going to attack the nervous system. The nervous system has a few different components. We have the sympathetic nervous system. Then we have the parasympathetic nervous system. We have the central nervous system. Right? However, all of them are just wired to do one thing. Survive. Okay? The parasympathetic nervous system, once we're able to activate that, we allow for the nervous system to relax, which allows for it to expand. Right? However, the sympathetic nervous system is the one that is constantly contracting because it wants to keep you at survival. Now, the central nervous system is what connects with the body for bodily function, and it's what quite literally, after you do some heavy lifting, tells you, hey, chill out a little bit. We're going to die. Let's not lift that heavy weight again. All right? Now, Shaitan can attack you at the nervous system. Be like, whoa. It's uncertain there. Don't do that business idea. Don't call your parents. You don't know what they're going to say. You don't know how they're going to react. Don't ask that girl for her hand because what if she rejects you? Or don't message that guy even though you're interested in him, even though you know he's not going to message you first. But even if your ego is going to be attacked if you message him first because you're a girl, you're not supposed to be messaging the guy, right? So a lot of uncertainty, right? And then it sends your nervous system into fight or flight, which creates anxiety, right? It creates uncertainty, and uncertainty creates anxiety. So Shaitan can attack the nervous system. Shaitan can send his little waswasas to people, and then people can become the vessels to send all the fear, uncertainty, and doubt to you. Now, this is all going to start making sense. By the way, fear, uncertainty, doubt is basically FUD. All right, so you're going to get fudded. Now you have to understand that your downloads from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is an independent variable. It is independent, okay? Because it's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the sovereign, the self-sustaining, as-samad. He doesn't need anybody. He's independent. Shaitan, however, is not independent. Shaitan doesn't send you downloads. He sends you waswasa, all right? He sends you the fear, uncertainty, doubt through different mechanisms. He attacks where you're weak. He finds out how you bend and how you fold. He's very smart. We need to give Shaitan some credit, but we only need to give him some credit only where it's due. All right. Look, it's a smart creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He studies us very hard. All right. We're not going to take him for granted. All right. We're not going to say, you know what, Shaitan, you ain't nothing. But we're not going to over amplify him and give him too much credit. We're just going to see him for who he is. All right. Very smart, knows how we crack, how we fold, studies us, all right, and knows exactly when to attack our logic, knows exactly when to whisper, knows exactly when to attack the nervous system, knows exactly who influences us and who we fold to, so we can whistle to those people, and then those people get influenced and then come to us. He knows exactly how to create the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And he knows exactly how to attack your circumstances to make you overanalyze your circumstances, to believe that, you know what, I won't be able to do this thing. And therefore, you stay stuck. And therefore, you can't receive the download, act upon the download. See the vessel and hop on the vessel. See the door, walk through the door. See that this is a qadr from Allah and be grateful for that qadr of Allah. Or see the symbolism and then be able to take action upon that symbolism. Shaitan does not want you to do that. And you need to understand that even though the download came from Allah, Shaitan can influence the download. The download does not come from Shaitan. You cannot get a thought from Shaitan. All he can do is whisper at the thought and make you perceive it differently. And this is where we go to the Quran versus mind control. Now, the CIA conducted an experiment called MK Ultra. MK Ultra is this mind control experiment. How can we control the mind of the masses? Now, here is one thing that you really need to understand. It's going to click a lot for the people who have especially studied these quote unquote, let's say elites. Okay. Now, the Quran is immovable. The Quran is unchangeable. Can we all agree? Yes, we can all agree that the Quran cannot be changed. It has been preserved and it is set in stone. However, if the Quran can't be changed, it is an independent variable. What can the CIA, what can the elites, what can the evil people who are controlled by clearly this individual right here, what can they do to make you perceive the Quran incorrectly? To perceive the Quran in a way that makes you doubt the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that makes you want to fight the Muslims, potentially leave Islam, doubt your own religion, doubt your own beingness. What can they do? They can control your mind. And they can control your mind in a lot of different ways, whether that's contaminating your water supply, whether that's programming on the TV, whether that's social media, whether that's the news, whatever it is. But they can control your mind. They can make you perceive the independent variable differently. This is something you have to understand. And once you understand this, conceptualize this, and raise your consciousness to this fact, you will never be the same. I promise you that. Because these independent variables exist and they cannot change. That's my phone about to die. It always signals that. These independent variables do not change. They simply do not change because they come from Allah, because Allah does not change. This is what you have to understand, is that however, Shaitan can make you believe that these independent variables are from him and therefore you won't even act upon it. He can make you fear, uncertainty, and doubt these cognitions, these downloads, these vessels, these doors, the qadr, the symbolism, the Quran, the hadith, whatever it is. And now you're stuck. And now your soul's being contaminated. And now there's a black dot there that keeps growing and growing and growing because he has some leverage. He has leverage over you. And here's this is the thing about Shaitan, right? Is all he needs to do is start snowballing you. The second he plants one idea that's negative, all it takes is one idea for him to take you down the negative spiral. And then at that point, he has leverage. You start creating the negative thoughts. All he did was one whisper. All he did was attack your logic. All he did was make your nervous system either hypo or hypersensitive. All he did was send the people there to keep you stuck. All he did was create fear, uncertainty, doubt. And all of this is by making you overlook your circumstances or underlook your circumstances. Either you're completely doubting or you're ungrateful. God knows. All right. But Shaitan is doing this. This is how he operates. All right. So this is a very, very good example. And you'll see a lot of people who leave the deen, they're just under some sort of spell, some sort of hypnosis. They have been mind controlled so that they perceive the deen differently. They perceive the hadith differently. They remove context. And social media is really a good display of that. You'll see even the Islamic influencers. They're not really getting it. And this is why I don't watch them. You'll notice I don't watch these guys. I don't really be listening to any of these people, right? Because you have to understand is that this is independent. The more you find people who are under the spell of the dependent, that can be very damaging, okay? And you have to raise your consciousness for that. Now you might be asking, well, how do we win? Look, it's very simple, okay? You have to act before Shaitan attacks. You have to act before Shaitan attacks. All right. When that intuition, that download, that synchronicity, that cognition, when that comes to you, the vessel, the door, the qadr, the symbolism, whatever it is, when it comes to you, you have to act before Shaitan attacks. Okay. And there's a good way to do this is you have to understand that one, this came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if it feels good, it's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If it really makes you feel closer to your Lord, it makes you feel closer to the source, it makes you feel connected to your Rabb, all right, because Allah is closer to you than your jugular vein, then most likely it's from Allah. 99.9% of the time. All right. Now, don't let Shaitan confuse you, right? That's why I put the 1.1% of marginal error, right? But you got to act before Shaitan attacks. And a good way to do this is to be grateful for the independent variables. Be grateful for the Quran. Be grateful for the symbolism. Be grateful for the qadr. Be grateful for the doors, the vessels, the downloads, the cognitions, the synchronicities. Be grateful for it. Because Allah says in the Quran, if you're grateful, then I will surely increase you, right? So allow for yourself to be increased by showing a genuine display and feeling of gratitude. It's really that simple. Now, there is a trifecta. I've talked about this trifecta before, but this is going to be how you are going to actually win. Okay, I use this trifecta myself. It allows me to win in life, alhamdulillah. It allows my students to win in life, alhamdulillah. And it's going to allow for you to win in life, alhamdulillah. And there are videos that I've posted on this. Just watch more videos. And I go into it deeper and deeper and deeper. But I will continue going deeper and deeper and deeper. So subscribe to the channel. Leave your cognitions. Leave your downloads and likes so that this goes to the people who need it. Now let's keep going. The first one is muraqabah. Now muraqabah, what is it? Muraqabah is presence. It is mindfulness. It is having a state of dhikr. It's emptying your mind because you are just enjoying the present moment. The feeling of the whiteboard, the feeling of your hands, the heat, the cold air that's going in through your breath and the hot air that is leaving. It is a state of meditation. It is presence because when you have an empty mind, only then can you receive the downloads to begin with. I want you to really think about this. Logically, let's think about this logically. Let's talk about a computer RAM. If the brain is constantly operating on RAM, let's say, can you send new downloads in there if the brain's already at capacity? If it's thinking? No, you can't, right? Can you put more water in an already full cup? No, it's going to overflow. So you got to empty your mind. You got to empty the cup so you can allow for Allah to send the new downloads in so you can finally see the vessel and the doors and the symbolism and the qadr and what is good for you. And you can finally be grateful for it, right? Because at the end of the day, with this full mind, Shaitan's just going to attack it, right? Because you already have thoughts that are racing. He's going to be like, oh, this person's thinking this. Let me twist this a little bit. Let me whisk out a little bit. All right, let me send some people in there. All right, let me attack the nervous system. Let me create some fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Let them overanalyze some circumstances, okay? So muraqabah is also a state of relaxation. When you are in a state of relaxation, the parasympathetic nervous system, which expands the nervous system, activates. And when you expand the nervous system, and nervous system can only be expanded through the parasympathetic nervous system. And you know what the frequency or the state or whatever you want to call it that actually does that? Certainty. Certainty. tawakkul, certainty. You have certainty in who you are. You have certainty in who your Lord is. And this is why you got to study the 99 names of Allah. This is why when you study Allah is Al-Fatah, He's opening doors for you. He's opening doors for you. Allah is Ar-Razak. He's giving you rizq, right? So you know that Allah is Al-Karim. You know He's generous. You know Allah is As-Samad. You know He's independent. He's independent, right? You know this. And when you understand who your Lord is and you understand how He operates, it's very, very easy to be in a state of relaxation because you have certainty in one thing. You don't know how things are going to happen in your life. You don't know when things are going to happen in your life. You don't know why things are going to happen in life, but you know who it's coming from. And when you have certainty in the who, life becomes pretty easy. You become pretty relaxed. You can be like a little kid again. You can be playful again. You can enjoy your life again. And that allows for you to see the doors clearly. If you notice that the people with the healed inner childs create the best businesses or the best programs or create the most beautiful families, you ask me how I've created anything, is because my inner child is so at peace. I trust my Lord like I'm in the passenger seat. I let Him take the steering wheel and I just relax. And I say, Ya Allah, take my life. I trust You. I trust the One. I trust the Who. Okay? And that's going to allow for you to have muraqabah. You're going to see everything clearly. You're going to enjoy your life. And that's going to keep you present, an empty mind, which is going to allow for the independent variables to come in. The downloads, the synchronicities, the cognitions. Now, once you are emptying your mind, you can now see the doors clearly. You see the doors. Now, there's an infinite possibilities. Infinite possibilities. All right? You can have so many different doors. However, I narrow it down to 3 to make it simple. Either you have a door that's going to be Shaitan's door through the dependent variable, which is the waswasa. So Shaitan is going to take one of the downloads you already received from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or attack the thoughts that are already in your mind, the negative spiral that you're already on, the energetic ball roll. You're just thinking negative, negative, negative. And then Shaitan presents you with a door, right? Through waswasa. And see, the doors are presented by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't forget this. Remember, the downloads can only come from Allah. But Shaitan can influence you into taking the wrong door. And how we can go about this is, let's say that it's a business idea. You know what? I want to start a business. I want to be my own boss. Well, Shaitan can send one of your friends that you hang out with, all right, the not so good friend, and that not so good friend could be like, hey, why don't we go and sell vapes? Why don't we go and sell tobacco? Why don't we go and sell alcohol? Why don't we start an OnlyFans agency? Why don't we start a gambling company, right? Why don't we take on a gambling sponsorship deal? Wow. Well, now Shaitan's influencing you through this friend who he sent the waswasa to. And you are heavily influenced by this individual. So now you're like, you know what? Seems like a pretty cool door. I might take it. But that only leads to your own destruction. That only leads to your black dot in your heart becoming bigger and bigger and bigger like a snowball, and then it leads you down the destructive path that could ruin your akhirah. And then you have the middle door, which is the one that pleases your ego or your nafs. This one that makes you seem so important. This one that makes you seem like you're the man or the woman, the one that gives you power, the one that gives you dominance. And you'll see that a lot of politicians, they run for office because they love that ego door. They run for office because they want to be important. People, they create influencer pages. They do dawah because they want to seem very important. They want people to praise Him. And remember that Allah tells us that amongst some of the first people who are going to be tested on the Day of Judgment, and amongst some of the first people who are going to go to Jahannam, are going to be the ones who wanted to get martyred so that people could say that they got martyred. They can be like, wow, what a righteous person, they got martyred. Or one of the person that spread the deen for people to be like, wow, what a knowledgeable person, right? The people who are quite literally hypocrites, they live for the praise of others when, let's be real, only Allah is worthy of praise, okay? So the ego door pleases the ego. Now we could talk about that in terms of opportunities, but even courting in a marriage. Shaitan's door, zina. The middle door, let's flirt. Let's have a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship and have it go nowhere. Be there for each other. Fill each other's voids and loneliness. Pleases the ego, pleases the nafs, right? And then there's Allah's door. You do things for the sake of Allah. You listen to that independent variable, that download, that door, that vessel, that qadr, that symbolism. You look into the Quran, you find the real meaning. You go to the people of knowledge and you ask them for guidance, true guidance, and the people who actually want to help you. People that are not restricting you, but looking into you with empathy, understanding you. and then raise you up to a higher level through the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You take their doors. And see, that's the thing about identifying these doors, is that it's very easy to identify these doors when you have muraqabah, when you have presence, when you have mindfulness, when you're relaxed. However, you have to be aware. You have to have consciousness. Now, a lot of people talk about God consciousness, which is taqwa at its finest. However, you also need to be Shaitan conscious. You also have to be nafs conscious. You have to be aware of what's going on with the devil. You have to understand who this is. This creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who works very hard, worked hard enough to worship Allah to the point of getting to the ranks of the angels, who became so arrogant through his effort and through his accomplishments, and then refused to prostrate to Adam alayhi salam. Think about that. Think about the people in your life, maybe even moments where you worked so hard to receive some sort of stature in life, some sort of positioning, because you're like, yeah, I'm better than these people now because I got the better job, or I got the better marriage, or my kids are better, right? I got more followers on the internet. You don't think I could go around telling people I'm better than them because I have more followers than them, or money than them, or maybe I'm taller than them? Astaghfirullah, what is this? An ego trip, right? We don't do that out here, all right? Allah is the only one worthy of praise. Allah is the only one worthy of praise. And see, that's the thing, is Shaitan has these traits, and arrogance is so disliked in the deen because that is who this individual is. That is who this creation of Allah is. He works hard. He knows us. And it is in his existence, his mission of his existence, his purpose in his creation is to lead us astray. Is to quite literally prove to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that when I didn't prostrate to Adam alayhi salam, I did the right thing because I am better than him. So he studies us. He studies our nervous system. He studies our fears, our uncertainty and doubt. He studies the people that can leave an impression on us. And he sends the waswasa to those things. He sends the waswasa to the logic. You look at your bank account. How am I going to afford this? And how am I going to make this month's rent? So you're just sitting there depressed and anxious all day, unable to trust your Lord, unable to take the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And see, that's the thing, is when you finally become Shaitan conscious, finally become nafs conscious, and you finally become God conscious, is when you're able to identify the doors clearly. And then you're like, you know what? I'm not going to take the gambling deal. You know what? I'm not going to praise myself. You know what? I'm not going to flirt with this girl or this guy unnecessarily. You know what? I'm not going to commit zina and link up the sneaky link, whatever you guys want to call it nowadays. You know what? I'm not going to talk to a girl unless it's for marriage, or a brother or a boy unless it's for marriage. And I'm not going to do a business unless it serves the ummah. I'm not going to spend $1 unless it's for the sake of Allah, because Allah tells us when we spend $1 for him, it's like planting the 7 seeds, and each one of those has 100 grains, and each one of those 100 grains leads to 700 times the barakah. I'm not gonna do anything unless it's for the sake of Allah. And then you choose Allah's door every single time, but because you're aware, because your mind's already empty, because you already trust your Lord, because you're already sitting in the passenger seat of your life and letting Allah drive. And then you see the vessels clearly, you see the doors clearly, you see the symbolism clearly, you read the downloads correctly. And then when you're able to have gratitude for it, wow, Allah, you just presented such a beautiful opportunity to me. A gambling deal. Wow, that's a lot of money. You gave me a good opportunity to reject this for your sake. You gave me a good opportunity to reject this for your sake. And I took the door of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ya Allah, you just sent a woman to me. She's lusting after me. I could have done anything. But you know what, Ya Allah? Thank you for this opportunity to make me choose your path one more time. I have consciousness. I'll reject her for the sake of Allah. I take your door every single time. Ya Allah, you presented me these business opportunities. I want to do one for the sake of the ummah. I'm tired of working with the people who are non-Muslim. I want to inject wealth into the ummah. I do this for the sake of Allah. I appreciate you. Alhamdulillah for that opportunity, Ya Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Think about that. I want you to think about this very, very clearly, okay? That's why it's important to have muraqabah first. It's important to have presence and an empty mind, because only then can you clearly think, right? Because you can see things. If you got this occupied mind, how are you supposed to get the downloads properly? How are you supposed to actually discern? Shaitan's just going to attack your thoughts, right? Now, it's really important that once you identify Allah's door, that you take the final step in this equation, which is you have tawakkul. You take the leap of faith, okay? Now, the leap of faith is very, very important because it requires something called courage. I came to a realization, this is what download from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I ask Allah to guide me in order to guide you guys. And I empty my mind. I say, Ya Allah, I don't know how I'm going to change the landscape of the ummah, right? I don't know how I'm going to educate the ummah. I don't know how I'm going to help impact the ummah and help change everybody's lives and get them closer to you. But I want to, Allah. I'm doing it for your sake. I surrender to you. You send the downloads to me. How am I going to articulate this message? And he made me realize one thing very powerful. Is that tawakkul in its finest form is just courage. It's courage to walk through these doors even though there's uncertainty on the other side. It's the courage to walk through the doors even though you don't know what's happening on the other side. You have no clue what's going to happen. You have no idea. You don't know how, you don't know when, you don't know why, you don't know how long it's going to take. Because it could be delayed. It could be delayed because you're not ready for it yet. It could be delayed because Allah is testing you. But you know who. And when you study the 99 names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when you study his 99 names and you understand that he's Ar-Razzaq, he's been providing for you, he will always provide for you. When you study his 99 names and you realize that Allah is Al-Kareem, he's been generous, he'll always be generous to you. When you realize that he's As-Samad, he is the independent, he is the sovereign, he does not need anyone. And therefore, when we rely upon him, he will have all the answers. Right? We don't need anyone either. Okay? So therefore you take the leap of faith with courage, with faith, and you kill the logic. Because Allah doesn't operate on this logic. All right? You can give sadaqah and then all of a sudden it's like 2 minus 1 equals 1,000,000. All of a sudden you give sadaqah and $1 million deal falls onto your table and you don't even know how it happened because Allah sent it. Kun fayakun, be and it is. Kill the logic. Just trust your Lord that he's sending you a miracle. Ya Allah, send me a miracle so big that it can only be from you. I trust that you will. See, and this is the one thing, is that tawakkul comes from the word wakil, which means the one who handles the affairs. Allah is the one that handles your affairs. So when you take the leap of faith and you hire Allah as your attorney, as the one who handles your affairs, don't get in his way. Let him do his job. They plan it, Allah plans, and then Allah is the best of all planners. All right? He's the best of all planners. He's going to plan for you. Let him do his job. All right? You just chill. Enjoy the seat. Keep moving. There's a beautiful hadith. The hadith is so powerful. Remember this hadith. I want you to remember this and remember it in your soul. Allah tells us that you have to rely upon him as if you're the birds who leave their nest with their empty stomachs and they come back with their stomach full. Now the beautiful thing about this hadith is there's a lot of beautiful symbolism here, right? The symbolism is that Allah tells us that we have to leave the nest. We got to move. Muraqabah is movement. Right? We got to move. Because only when we move can we see the doors. And only when we see the doors can we actually take the leap of faith and walk through the doors. Right? Allah doesn't say, sit still and do nothing. Now, provision can come to you while you sit still and do nothing. If you truly trust your Lord, you can be in your house and all of a sudden somebody can ring your doorbell and the food could be there. The money could be there. Right? The money could be sent in your bank account just remotely. You can do nothing. However, isn't it more barakah if you could just go out, enjoy your life that Allah has created you, worship him with every step, be in a constant state of dhikr, and then you rely upon him, and then he sends you the provision, he sends you all the things that you need. All of a sudden you meet somebody who introduces you to your future spouse, or your future business deal, or your future mentor, whatever it is, right? So having the leap of faith is so important. Remember that Allah doesn't burden a soul more than it can bear. So all the problems that come with your future life, you have to be able to look at that as a responsibility, right? You have to be able to handle it. If you're too scared of that life, then Allah's not going to give it to you, right? Everybody wants the money, everybody wants the followers, everybody wants the fame, everybody wants the marriage, everybody wants the kids, but that comes with responsibility, brothers and sisters. Tell Allah I'm also ready for the responsibilities as well, right? So when you take that leap of faith, it's easy to handle the responsibilities when you say, Ya Allah, strengthen me to handle the responsibilities. I don't know how I'll do it. I'm so unknowing. I'm kind of stupid. But you got my back and I know that. You're Al-Wakil. All right, you're going to handle the affairs. Okay? Anyways, that's it for this video. All right? Act before Shaitan attacks. Have gratitude for the downloads that Allah sends you. Okay? Operate on the trifecta. Inner Circle memberships will be down below. Please leave a like, subscribe, leave your cognitions, your downloads, your synchronicities, your aha moments for the other people so that they can benefit.